Let's talk about being anxious for the future. I would like to discuss my credentials for making this video. I am a professional worrier and I worry a lot for the future, or I have in the past. I think I'm getting a bit better at it, but I think of all Christians on the face of the earth, I would probably be in the top percentile of people to talk to you about worrying about the future because I know something about worrying about the future. My name is Jamie Eckert and I share videos with my fellow Christians about dealing with anxiety and how God can help us through things like depression, anxiety, and our friend obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm going to share a few verses with you that I hope will be encouraging, but I want to just talk first of all about worrying for the future. And hopefully I'll share some thoughts that will be useful to you. They've certainly gone far in helping my own cure, which is constantly in progress, of course. Worrying for the future is, as I mentioned, something that I can do very well because I like to be in control. I don't like gray areas. I like everything to be black and white. I have said before that I would not mind planning my life out day by day till the date of my death and just knowing exactly what's coming. I don't like not knowing what's coming. Future periods of time where I can't fill in the blanks and know what's coming, or if there is some uncertainty there, it's extremely bothersome to me. And it's taken years for me to learn to have some amount of peace in the face of unknowns. I want to just reminisce a little bit about the last big anxieties that I've had. For example, when my husband and I moved back, we lived overseas for almost a decade and we came back to the US in the end of 2020. And we didn't know where we were going to be living. And so we literally had a 3-year period of trying to find a house because first of all, we're very picky. And secondly, the housing market was just horrendous. Anyone who was buying a house between 2020 and 2023, you know what I'm talking about. It was just really terrible. And so I would be literally like every day worrying, where are we going to live? Where are we going to live? We had a temporary apartment, which we really disliked. And so we were eager to get out of it. And it was just the constant sense of like, what's the future holding? What can we expect? What's coming around the corner? Is it going to be today? Is it going to be next week? When are we going to find our permanent home? And it was really hard. And we were working on starting a family. And so we wanted to be like moved in somewhere and be settled and secure before we had our baby. I was worried. Now, what happens when you start worrying about the future? One of the very common things that we do is we start catastrophizing, which is that because the future is shaded in shadowy clouds and foggy haze, and we can't quite perceive what the future holds, we automatically assume the worst possible scenario. We see that there must be some catastrophe up ahead. That's catastrophizing, of assuming that the future is going to be a catastrophe simply because we don't know what it is. I would get these dark fantasies in my mind. I don't think that's even the right word because fantasy is kind of something that you're looking forward to. These dark nightmares in my mind that like we were going to be homeless and I would have to live out of a car or live on the street and find some soup kitchens to get my daily bread. And of course, that's never going to happen. But that's what goes through your mind when you're worrying about the future. You're catastrophizing the worst possible scenario of what could happen. I remember the same thing happened when I was pregnant with our daughter. Oh no, I can't see inside my stomach. Like I can't like make a little glass window and look inside and make sure she's fine and listen to her heartbeat every day. So of course she's gonna die. Catastrophizing. Constantly looking at the future and thinking that the worst case scenario is going to happen. I don't believe that's what God's ideal is for us. The Bible does describe that he wants us to be at rest and at peace in him. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." I think Jesus was inviting us not merely to some kind of a physical rest, but a spiritual and emotional rest as well, to be able to just like lay down in a bed on the soft pillows with a nice cozy comforter and just be like, I'm at home in my Father's house. I don't know what he's making for dinner. I don't know what activities we will do tomorrow, but I know it will be good because I know my Father is good. That's what he wants for us. And I want to share just a couple of verses that remind me that trusting in God means I don't need to catastrophize about the future. I don't need to worry about, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? How do I control all the details of the future? I'd like you to go with me to Psalm 112. And Psalm 112 starts out by saying, "Praise the Lord. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who delights greatly in his commandments. His descendants will be mighty on earth. The generation of the upright will be blessed." And it goes on to describe this blessed man who is delighting in God's commandments and who is fearing the Lord, or having healthy respect for the Lord. And there's one verse that I want to focus on that's describing this blessed person, and it's in verse 7. He will not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. His heart is established. He will not be afraid until he sees his desire upon his enemies. So we have this description of this blessed man, that his heart is established. I think the King James Version says his heart is fixed, like fixed in place with bolts and screws, and it's just not moving. It's not going anywhere. His heart is established and fixed and firm. And it says it's because he's trusting in the Lord. So when we have trust in God, we will experience this reality of our heart not flip-flopping around, always going this way, going that way, worrying about the future, worrying about the past, worrying about our own reality, worrying about our sincerity, worrying about our salvation. Like, all these concerns will not be moving us. Our heart will be fixed and steadfast when we trust in the Lord. Now, I recently did another video where I was talking about Ebed-Melech and how he saved the prophet Jeremiah's life when he pulled him up out of the pit. And God basically said, that's what it means to trust. You know, just doing the right thing. That's what it means to trust, that you're letting God live through you. And I want to be clear in this video, I am not talking about trust as being an emotional experience, because I know that it's easy for us to turn trust in God into this emotional, like, do I feel trusting? Like, no, I feel anxious, so I must not be trusting. I don't want to equate trust with an emotional response to God, because I don't think that's what it is. But this passage is telling me that trusting in the Lord brings an experience of a steadfast heart, a heart and emotions that will not be easily moved. And I'd like to go to another passage to shed some light on a little bit of what I think it can be talking about when we're describing this experience of trust. What do we really mean? What is trust? And I'd like you to go with me to Isaiah 26, and I will read verses 3 and 4. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for in Yah, the Lord, is everlasting strength. So here in Isaiah 26, the experience of trusting in God is equated to keeping our minds fixed or stayed upon God. Again, this is not an emotional experience of trying to muster up some feelings of trust, but it's rather living in such a way that I'm continually putting my mind back on God instead of putting my mind on myself. This is not super intuitive to the Christian that has OCD, because when we have obsessive compulsive disorder, the natural tendency is to constantly be thinking about ourselves because we're worried that there's something wrong with us. We're worried that there's something wrong with our relationship with God or with our salvation or with our morality, and so we're trying to fix ourselves. And where does the focus go? The focus goes on self. And who's not going to get anxious when you're thinking about yourself all day? I have problems. If I think about myself all day, I'm going to get anxious. And so I see that part of the solution here to learning to trust God securely and being able to have our heart and emotions in a stable place, part of the solution here is learning to look away from ourselves. Learning to stop focusing inward and start focusing upward. Because as it says, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed or fixed or fastened upon you. The person with religious OCD is probably listening to me thinking, oh no, I don't think about God 24/7. I must be condemned. And let's not take this for more than what I think it's talking about. I think that it's probably outlandish to think that 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, I have to be thinking about some religious theme, or else I'm not fulfilling what this verse is talking about. That would be extreme. Obviously, even when Jesus was here on earth, he took time to go to weddings and talk to people on the side of the street, and he did things in real life. He was working in a carpenter's shop. Surely, as a carpenter, Jesus had to stop and make calculations for how long a board needed to be before he sawed it. That means that for that moment of time, he wasn't thinking about something spiritual. He was thinking about real life stuff, and the same thing goes for us as well. Having our minds securely fixed and stayed upon God doesn't mean that this has to be a super intense, hyper-religious, 24/7 experience of having our thoughts on God, only God, and nothing but God. In a healthy way, I think what we're looking for is for us to live a life that's in this world. We're obviously not running to some kind of commune in the wilderness where we don't have to interact with the world. Like, we still have to go to the grocery store. We still have to wash laundry. We still have to go to our place of work. So we're living in this world, but God's Principles are flowing through us as his Spirit lives in us, and our mind is returning to him at the various moments in the day when we're able to turn our minds heavenward. And that doesn't need to be made into a hyper-religious like thing where you can't even get your work done, but just in a natural way of turning our minds heavenward. Oh, I have a moment here, I have a moment there. I lift my mind towards the Lord. If this becomes an anxiety-inducing thing, there's probably something to troubleshoot in your experience, right? So feel free to make a comment below if you've kind of worked through this and experienced there's sort of a dark side to this if you have OCD, because I have seen people wanting to put their mind on God and it turns into like this compulsive thing where they feel like they can't think about anything else all day. And that's really not the extreme to which I'm trying to communicate this. But regardless, this is inviting us to be able to put our minds on God in a way that is stabilizing and calming, and it fills us with security and peace. That necessitates getting outside my own brain, looking away from myself, and putting my mind on God. And as we read in Psalm 112, when we have this experience, it says, he will not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. I want to have that experience of having a steadfast heart, of not looking to the future and being afraid of evil tidings. Oh, somebody said this. Somebody said the housing market's going to get worse. Somebody said the politics are going to get worse. Somebody said this is going to get worse. I don't want to be caught in that whirlpool of always worrying when bad tidings come to me. I don't know if anybody here watches the news, but I just want to recommend an experience. Try not watching the news. I do not watch the news, and I haven't watched the news for many years, and I realized I'm not missing anything. I really am not. If there's big events that happen, I hear about it in other ways, and all the other stuff, I just am not missing it. He will not be afraid of evil tidings, it says. We also don't want to be feeding ourselves extra evil tidings that we don't need. In the beginning, I was sharing about a little bit of my story of trying to buy a house, and I think I've mentioned that a few times over the last year or so. I just want to say, all that worrying was for nothing. I wish I could show you guys through my window and around my house, but the Lord gave us more than we ever wished for. It's a small little old farmhouse, but we were looking for a place in the country and God gave it to us. And it's just the most beautiful place, better than anything I could have imagined during those 3 years that we were looking and searching and bidding on houses that other people outbid us by $70,000 more. It was just a crazy, crazy time. All that worrying was for nothing because God had something special for us. And here we are with our own little house now, growing our little family, and all those evil tidings that I was worrying about were just my imagination. And what if all of the evil tidings that your mind is fastening upon, what if all the catastrophizing that you are thinking about right now, what if that's also for nothing? I think part of growing in our mental health as we grow closer to God is also being able to recognize, what if I'm wrong in the way I'm allowing my brain to process things? And what if all of these bad things that I'm just convinced are definitely going to happen, what if that's my imagination? What if I can afford to let go of that and just trust that, hey, God loves me. He's going to find a way to make everything work out. Whether that's your salvation, whether that's your work problems, your family problems, your mental health issues that you've been struggling with, God can make it all work out. And so let's trust in Him. Let's get out of our own heads today and look at Him instead of looking at ourselves and trying to figure out the problem for ourselves. I hope this has been a little bit encouraging to you today. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I don't usually ask this, but I figured at least 1 out of 10 videos I should throw that in there, because then it makes me sound like a real YouTuber, right? Please subscribe and smash that. You're welcome to be here. I'm glad for you to be here on the channel, whether you subscribe or not. And I just hope this is a blessing to you guys. So anyways, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you back for our next video.